everyone. Welcome back to She Burst Podcast. I'm your host, Brooke Michelle, and today's guest is Malinda. Hi, Malinda.
Hey Brooke, how are you?
I'm great. Thank you so much for being a guest today.
Thanks for having me.
So, you wanted to come on my podcast today to discuss Boys 2. Can you tell us a little bit about this documentary?
Hashtag Boys 2 is a documentary that is on the human trafficking, mostly sex trafficking of boys and young men. Um, it's a subject I find that many people look at me and go, that didn't happen. No
Mm-hmm.
way.
Yeah.
Yeah. But sadly, I can prove otherwise.
Yeah, we was just discussing before then, before we went live, that I was talking to my friend and he was walking home from work, and I told him about human trafficking, and he was like, "That's least likely to happen," and told him because he's a boy or a man, but
Uh,
yeah,
but sadly, the statistics right now are about 48% of youth trafficked are male.
what got you into this specifically?
Um, Going on a year and a half ago, I actually met the founder of one of the two safe homes in the entirety of the US for boys, for recovery. The Hope House, Bob's House of Hope here in the Denver and the Denton area up around Dallas.
Mm-hmm.
And met with him, and then I met a couple of the residents. And while they're talking to me, I'm thinking of all the calls I made when I was a firefighter in
Mm-hmm.
that area for almost 14 years. And I thought, holy Toledo, how many victims did I put back in the hands of their trafficker without knowing it? Because I never got training on this. And we were never told that this was an issue
Mm-hmm.
for men or boys.
That's true.
So um, kind of got overwhelmed with guilt and decided I actually needed to do something about it.
Mm. So, are you
So
still a firefighter or no?
no, I haven't been for a few years. But one of the things I have found is they still don't get training on human trafficking.
They still
Yeah,
don't.
yeah. Um, Sex abuse they do, but I mean, as a paramedic, we had like an hour. It was mentioned in passing, kind of like doctors only get, you know, half a day of nutritional training,
Mm-hmm.
but they want to tell you how to eat. It's kind of the same sort of theory. There's so much other stuff that we have to learn that's not at the forefront of their thinking. Although we're
Wow.
the first ones who are probably going to see these
Mm-hmm.
individuals, male or female,
Mm-hmm.
when something goes wrong.
That's
So,
true. That's true. They are the first on the call.
yeah, yeah.
Wow.
So it's important for first responders and medical staff and police officers to know
Mm-hmm.
that information and how to communicate to those individuals. One of the things one of the boys told me over and over again, I just wish somebody would have asked me
Yeah. Yeah.
because I would have told them and I could have gotten out sooner.
Yeah.
But nobody bothered.
Usually, like the men that I've interviewed on my podcast, they usually say that they don't want to seem weak. And is that true
Mhm.
about boys too? Like they don't want to seem weak or.
There's a lot more shame around it for boys,
Mm-hmm.
um, because we think as a society that they should be able to handle themselves, that they have control over that function and those things.
Mm-hmm.
But they have no more control over it than a female does.
Right. Right.
So there's a lot more shame for them because it does make them appear weak.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's what I've been getting like the hint of. Like they
Yeah,
usually feel shameful and I don't know, like
yeah,
regret and Yeah.
Yeah. So a lot of them won't identify as victims for that reason.
Yeah, that's true. So, can you tell us a little bit about the documentary? When it's been coming, like, what are you doing in the documentary, and when it's going to come
Sure.
out?
My goal is for January during Human Trafficking Month.
Hmm.
It's going to have dramatizations of the 5 different boys I've met with their stories sort of watered down so that they can't be identified.
Okay.
Um, but so we'll do the dramatizations and I'll have interviews with different um, experts in the field, those who work with trafficking victims. There's a director out of the Phoenix House of Hope, the
Hmm.
Dream Center in Phoenix, that is the only other boys recovery center in the US,
Hmm.
um, who covers what she sees and what she's noticed throughout the time. Both of those programs, the one in Denton and the one in Phoenix, only work with boys from 18 to 24.
Oh,
So basically, once they age out of the foster care system, they can enter into here. Um, so there's nothing for those beyond 24, and there's very little trafficking specific. There's nothing trafficking specific for under 18,
what? Really?
really.
Why hasn't the is it the government's job to do that? Like, why haven't they? Is it their job
That's,
to do that?
that's a good question, isn't it?
Wow. It's like they
These are
really
the
don't care.
Yeah, I mean there are programs, but they're not for trafficking. And trafficking has a whole different set of traumas to it that just, and this is horrible to say, that just physical abuse of a child doesn't have.
Hmm.
The
Yeah.
manipulation and the lies and all the Stockholm syndrome type behavior that comes with being trafficked
Hmm.
is
Hmm.
different than a child who is just beaten.
Yes.
And that's sad to say that it's just beaten because that's not how I mean it, but
Hmm.
there's more that needs to be entailed. Some of the boys I met are very wise beyond their years in some areas of life,
Hmm.
and then others, like general health or hygiene, they know nothing. Many of them
Really?
have to be taught how to brush their teeth because they've never been taught anything.
And this is in the foster care system or just in general?
Um, One boy was actually sold to his trafficker by his own father. Yeah. Another one was adopted from a foreign country, was abused by his adoptive family, put into the foster care system, and then was trafficked. So many of them start this cycle very young, um, 5, 6, 7, 8, and they run through this until their mid 20s, sometimes later, before they get help, or sadly, before they commit suicide, overdose, or just end up dead.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, One of the boys had overdosed 3 times before he got a place at Bob's House of Hope. The 2 homes have about 30 beds for the approximately 144,000 youth that are trafficked every year that are male.
Oh, man.
So,
Oh, man. I did not know
yeah,
that.
yeah,
And just for my listeners, can you tell us what trafficking is, just so they know?
yeah. Human trafficking, sex trafficking especially, is the use of force, fraud, or coercion to enlist someone to perform sexual acts without their will.
Mhm.
When a child is involved, force and fraud are not necessary, nor is coercion. Any sexual act that a child is forced or is performed with or on is sex trafficking. So once they hit 18, then they have to be forced to do it. There has to be some sort of fraud, some sort of coercion, and they don't get any payment other than it's like I can't imagine having sex with somebody so I can have a hamburger from McDonald's.
Oh wow.
But that's
And
what some of them do.
do like have you ever spoken to any of them that have brought some of their sex traffickers to justice, like went to like speak to someone?
Yes, there's actually a guy that was from San Antonio who took his trafficker and had him put away into jail. He was successful. Prosecuting sex trafficking is difficult
Hmm.
because of the way it unfolds, especially with children.
Hmm.
Um, and prosecutors are more apt to find other ways to put that person in jail. So they'll find a lesser charge that they know they can get to made to stick.
Hmm.
So they don't actually get the time in jail they should,
What is
but at
there?
least they go to jail.
What can my listeners do to help with your documentary? Like, I want to get involved.
Um, I like to say that when I was a kid growing up, we used to hear it takes a village to raise a child.
Hmm.
I like to say it takes an aware village to raise a child
Hmm.
because until we become aware, we can't make it stop.
Right.
So, and my goal is to have everybody aware, at least so you know what's going on.
Hmm.
Know your neighbors, know your neighbor kids. If you see a kid who doesn't ever come outside and there's no obvious reason, like, they're not in a wheelchair, there's nothing that should be stopping them from playing outside with other
Hmm.
children, or they don't talk to you at all, kind of take note of that. It's not
Hmm.
normal for kids not to be inquisitive about people around them,
Right. Right. That's
right?
true.
As far as the documentary goes, I can always use funding. Um, Sadly, the people I work with like to get paid. They like to eat. Um, so funding is a thing. Um, and I'm open to any ideas that anybody has or what they would like to learn. If you have a question,
Hmm.
shoot me a message. If I don't know the answer, I will find the person that does.
Yeah,
I have quite the
definitely.
resource at my hands right now that I go through. Um,
Definitely.
and go to your local the shelters around you. Find out why they don't help boys.
Hmm.
Why there's not a program in your area. Talk to your legislator. Say, excuse me, but human trafficking is a big deal. We have centers for girls. Why don't we have anything for boys here?
Yeah. I don't even know if we even have a center for boys here. I don't even know at all. And
I
that's
can
not
tell, I
good.
can, unless you're in Denton or Phoenix, you do not. Those are the only two in the United States. There was one in Florida that closed because the state preferred to put those boys into the juvenile system instead of
What?
getting them the help that they needed.
So it seems like the government is just creating criminals, is basically what they're doing, creating criminals and drug people that's going to be addicted to drugs. They're not helping them
They're not helping them. That's correct.
at
We're
all.
putting a band aid on the problem
Hmm.
to make people feel better, but we're not going to the source of the problem and getting rid of it.
Yes.
Many of these boys do commit crimes. I'm not going to say they don't.
Hmm.
Most of it's petty theft because they're
Hmm.
hungry, so they'll
Yep.
shoplift,
Hmm.
or they're committing some sort of crime for their trafficker,
Yep. Yep.
right?
Hmm.
Um, Many of them are addicted to drugs, but their trafficker also tends to put them on drugs because it makes them
Yep.
more compliant.
Yeah.
And it's like with the homeless, I'll tell people if I had to sleep on concrete outside 24/7,
Mhm.
I'd probably be high on drugs too,
Yeah. Yeah.
because it hurts. That stuff is not comfortable.
Yeah.
So, many times that is true, but that's why we need systems to help them become more sustainable later and productive. Because until we can get them better, they can't be productive.
Yes. Yes. I agree. So on your website, I'm trying to go to it. Okay. On your website, you have a store, or is your
I do.
website still, you
I
do?
do have a store. I have, you can go, there's t-shirts and all kinds of different t-shirts, mugs, beanie caps, all kinds of different things with different sayings on them.
And this is
Um,
to help support your
it
documentary.
helps. Yep, it helps to support the documentary and eventually the nonprofit I'll start. But the documentary is the start.
Okay. Okay. Yeah, I definitely would like to get involved and do something, help out any way I can. So
Appreciate
don't
that.
leave after this. But but because I
Yeah,
want to talk to you after this.
yeah, yeah.
But
So yeah,
okay,
there's all kinds of different
this dope.
designs.
This is cute.
Thanks.
And you got hoodies and everything. Did you design them yourself?
I did.
Oh
It's a
wow.
scary thought, isn't it?
And what is
It's just
screening request?
for when the documentary is done, you
Hmm.
can put in requests now, and then when it's done, I'll send out and we can schedule a time for it to be screened for your group of people.
Oh, okay. So I can have it screened on my podcast?
You could. We could
Okay.
work that out.
Okay. Cool, cool. I can do that. I can do that. So I want to thank you so much for coming on my podcast. Is there anything else you would like to share before I let you go?
No, thank you though, and just remember, it's not just a girl thing. It's a humanity thing. It's not just an over there thing. It's an everywhere thing.
True, true,
Trafficking happens across the globe.
true, true. I want to thank you so much for being a guest on my podcast, and I hope you have a great day.
Thanks, you too.
Bye.
Bye.
Hey everyone, thank you all so much for listening to my podcast, and hope to see you next time for the next interview. Bye.